It's Thursday. We got a fun matchup with the Packers and Lions tonight. We're going to break down this game from a fantasy football perspective. We're going to see how the fantasy points could be scored from this game so you can make your decisions of which players you want to play tonight. Traditional redraft, daily fantasy football, prop bets. Look at the information, take it in, and then make your plays accordingly to the information you just heard from the video and saw from the images. But before we dig in, you need to click that subscribe button right now. We're deep diving games. We're helping you set your lineups. We're going deep on the waiver wire. We're doing deep dives on the trending players so you can get more information on them. A lot of stuff coming at you here. Click that subscribe button. Stop missing out. But we got to dig into this matchup here. Packers, Lions. Vegas is saying 51.5 over under. They're saying that a lot of fantasy points are going to be scored in this game due to that number. They're projecting this to be a high-scoring game. I do not care if it hits the over or the under. I'm not projecting that. But when I see that number, the odds are saying that it's highly more likely that we're going to get a higher point total from these two teams. And to get to that point total, you got to have players getting yards on the field and touchdowns, which means more fantasy production. That's what that number says. And it says the odds are more likely. Historically, when you look at these two teams, when they play each other from 2023 to now, 20-16, 34-20, 22-29, 24-14, you're getting volume in these games. On average, you're getting 35.67 pass attempts from Green Bay, 31.33 from Detroit. You're getting volume in the passing game. Passing yards 248 to 217. Total yards 339 to 375 over the last 3 games. So almost 700 yards combined between the two teams when they're playing each other. And divisional matchups are fun because you got recent metrics to go after. The last time these two teams played this year, 24-14, 38 total points combined. Jordan Love throws for 273 yards and Jared Goff 145 and does not need to push the pace. Detroit gets up early, so the game script influenced that. You're seeing Dave Montgomery and Jahmyr Gibbs get some yards. Josh Jacobs gets a little bit. And you're seeing the fantasy production get funneled to the top guys. Amon-Ra St. Brown, 7 targets, 7 balls caught, 56 yards and 1 touchdown. Jayden Reed, 5 balls caught, 113 yards. So one thing you can definitely say in this matchup, that the ball's probably going to be funneled to the stars of this matchup and not much ancillary going to the other wide receivers. One thing we do know historically, going back to last year, Christian Watson has the potential to splash in these matchups, and Romeo Doubs is not going to be into this game. Christian Watson splashed against the Lions last year. I think it was on Thanksgiving. That being said, that's something to pay attention to. This is not going to be like the same stats 1-for-1 from last time to this time, but it is also an indicator of how things can roll. Also, the prior games were a little bit higher scoring, which means you could get a little bit more something out of them. That being said, I expect a little bit more passing on both sides. I expect both quarterbacks to be over 200 yards. And how this game could break and go wrong for us is one team get up in the first half, and that one team can just chill, can just crush clock and everything else. The other team, on the other hand, might be good for fantasy football, but that first half might be a little bit rocky. So you got to look at both sides on everything, especially when you're doing content to help people out. But when you're looking at these quarterbacks here, Love is a top 10 quarterback, and you're looking at 4-for-4 rankings right there, and that makes sense. You're looking at 51 over under. A lot of people are going to start Jordan Love today. A lot of people are going to do that. When you're looking at Jared Goff, he's going to be an iffy start, and he's down there at QB 12 in the rankings. I do not make those rankings. Those are not mine. But I look at other rankings, and I gauge the market, and I use the market to influence decisions because that's what people do with the S&P 500. That's what people do with other things when it comes to investments. That being said, when you're looking at investments for these players, you're looking at a guy like Jared Goff. The market's a little bit cooler on him. However, it might be recency bias from the last game. If the Lions are up, it'll be cooled off. If this is a tight matchup where both teams are moving the ball, which could potentially happen, then maybe not. He has potential to go off in this game. He definitely does. And the quarterbacks behind him also have that potential, but they're a little bit more iffy. They're a little bit more up and down compared to him. And you're looking at some of the quarterbacks ranked ahead of him. Just make your choice appropriately. You'll know more once we talk about the wide receivers. But looking at the Packers running backs here, Josh Jacobs is good to play. Look for him to get volume. Look for him to get opportunity. Last time scored 12.8 PPR fantasy points against the Lions. The Lions are shutting down the run game. And they're bend but don't break when running backs are doing well. They only broke twice. Kenneth Walker went off. Aaron Jones hit the 20 spot. Outside of that, they've been shutting running backs down. However, I think Josh Jacobs, on average, would probably score about 10 to 12 fantasy points. You simulate this game 50, 100 times, I think the average will be around 10, 11, 12, 13 fantasy points, maybe pushing the 15 range. Hitting the 20 spot is going to be tough in this matchup. On top of that, there is a chance that his workload gets reduced a little bit due to him coming back and being cleared from the injury, and Manny Wilson gets some touches. If you're playing DFS and you're making a lot of lineups, like over 100, then obviously you're going to do this by default. But Manny Wilson is a running back to look at on the cheap just in case he crosses the goal line. You're getting those Packer stacks, and you're looking for that cheap bet so you can cram in more expensive players just in case he crosses the goal line. He's also due. He's got 1 touchdown on the season. He's doing good work out on the field, 4.9 yards per carry. And if they reduce Josh Jacobs' workload by even 5 to 10%, that's still 5 to 10% more for Emanuel Wilson to surprise you on the field. Looking at the Packers wide receiver, Romeo Doubs is out for week 14, so this is going to drastically change things in the offense. Jayden Reed is going to be started by a lot of folks out there. 17% target share on the field right now, and he did well against the Detroit Lions last time, scoring 16.3 PPR fantasy points. They got kind of a pass funnel defense, so they shut down the run pretty good. So teams tend to push it a little bit more through the air, try to get it to their wide receivers, try and make those big plays downfield, and you're seeing that with some of these wide receivers here. John Mechie scored 18.4 PPR fantasy points. Keenan Allen, 24.3 last week. They'll break a little bit. They'll also bend in most games to the top wide receivers. So Jayden Reed, a lot of people are going to look at starting him. Christian Watson's going to be your gamble play from this offense. And of course, Dontayvion, Wicks, Bo Melton could get it on any given Sunday with the carousel effect, and more likely, or a better chance of that happening, or better odds with Romeo Doubs out. They could be surprise plays, and we wouldn't be surprised if that happens due to the nature of the Packers offense. We created the term carousel effect due to this Packers offense last year, due to random wide receivers just getting it on any given Sunday because the targets are sprayed around. Pretty good game to game, different flow. Obviously, we want Reed first, Doubs second when healthy, Watson next, Wicks, Melton. But when it's in game, things are different, and on a small sample, things are different when looking at matchups. When you're looking at Tucker Kraft, tight ends are going to tight end. Tight ends are not really doing well against the Detroit Lions. If they're shutting down the run really well, they might look more to the pass. However, he scored 7.6 PPR fantasy points against the Detroit Lions in Week 9. That's not looking great. However, it's up and down. It's whether or not he can score that touchdown. We got 6 on the season. If we hit that touchdown, we do well. If we don't, we don't do well in the box score. So really, it's just a gamble for that touchdown and how well this team is moving the ball, increasing those odds. Now we're looking at the Detroit Lions running backs here. They're in a good matchup. The Packers are a little higher than average when it comes to allowing fantasy points to running backs. They're bend, and they rarely break. They broke 3 times this season, once to Saquon, once to Joe Mixon, once to Devin H.N. After that, they bend every game but one, and that was that Christian McCaffrey game in Week 12. That being said, when you're looking at the Detroit Lions here, you're looking at 2 running backs that everybody's plugging in unless they're absolutely blessed to a comical standpoint at running back. Jahmyr Gibbs has been on fire this year, 10 touchdowns. David Montgomery has 11 touchdowns. Both running backs have been great for fantasy. Both of them are getting good workload. Both of them are being efficient. Jahmyr Gibbs, 6 yards per carry. Montgomery, 4.3. But he's getting a lot of work. He's getting a lot of goal line opportunities. And again, if they miss, it's just a bad beat, but they're looking good for this matchup. You're looking at the wide receivers here. Amon-Ra St. Brown is just getting elite target share. And if it's a bad beat, it's a bad beat. He will give you those from time to time. Amon-Ra St. Brown, the last time they played, 18.6 PPR fantasy points. That being said, a lot of people are just going to start him. That's just going to happen. And when you look at Jameson Williams, getting almost a 20% target share, and we got an 8 out of 13.2. We bring in that deep target, and we splash. We look at the Packers defense. They are a little less than average when it comes to allowing fantasy production to wide receivers. That makes sense considering Amon-Ra St. Brown did not hit a 20 spot against them last time. So if you're trying to predict an odds of Amon-Ra St. Brown, more than likely if we simulated this game like 50 to 100 times, probably around the 15-point area. With the lows of being under 10, probably happening about 10 to 15% of those games, and the odds of scoring 25 plus probably being about 10 to 15% of those games. That being said, probably around 15% points considering what you're seeing here. You also need this game script to break. Jameson Williams has to break free for him to get those targets downfield and get the air yards necessary to be big-time productive. We're looking at Sam Laporta, and really when you think about a season, you think grotesque, but when you look back on the numbers week to week, it's really just the tight end spot. The ADOT's low. The targets are lower compared to last year. Last year, we were over a 20% target share. Right now, we're at 15%, so not consistently high. The Packers will allow fantasy points to tight ends. However, it was Jonnu Smith, George Kittle, who's been getting good volume over the last 2 weeks. They've allowed 41 PPR fantasy points over the last 2 weeks to tight ends. So they may look to go to Sam Laporta in this matchup a little bit more, especially if the wide receiver spot gets locked down a little bit more. Like I said about Tucker Kraft, you're gambling on the touchdown here. You're also gambling on him hitting 2 weeks in a row. He has not really done that. Week 5, he wasn't in. And then week 6 against Dallas, he gave you that second week. So I was technically wrong on that statement. But 2 weeks in a row we have not hit in fantasy football. That's something to pay attention to when it comes to Sam Laporta. But on top of that, this is just a matchup where it's serious to serious, play to play. You're hoping he breaks loose, and you're hoping he gets that touchdown for you to get that fantasy production that you need for your team. That's the matchup. Those are the start sits. I kind of tell you between the lines there by the numbers, and you just got to do what you got to do. Let me know what you think in the comments below. Make sure to hit that subscribe button on the way out. Thank you for watching. Catch you on the next video.